So we can begin with some meditation. I'm going to give a very short guided meditation and allow people to have the time for some silent meditation, more time for silent meditation. And I might say a word here and there. I hope it's not too disturbing. I know for some people it's helpful. If someone breaks into speech in the middle of the session, it brings them back. But this is helping us to remember to be in the present moment. So this is one of the benefits, one of the kind of purposes. It's one of the benefits and purposes of the meditation is to be aware of things as they are and getting to know the truth really deeply by really exploring the present moment deeply. And most of us our minds are projecting into the future or reflecting on the past memories. But sati is remembering to be in the present, to be aware of the present, bringing our awareness back to some object in the present moment, whether it's a mental object or physical. So we'll start with mindfulness of the body. Some of the awareness is knowing how the body is positioned. Is this a position that I can hold my body for a comfortable 40 minutes? So just getting oneself in an upright position that's sustainable. And also bringing awareness to caring for the body. If there's some unusual pain or discomfort, then it's a good idea to very mindfully, with full awareness, to shift a little bit. It's not about ignoring danger or ignoring some harm that you might be causing to yourself. It's just kind of doggedly staying put, but just kindness and care, bringing kindness and care to this body. So we put ourselves in a comfortable position with full awareness how things are lined up. And then sensing the body. You can start with sensing the weight of the body, the pressure of the body against what's supporting it. And then you can gradually start sensing the body from the soles of the feet, all the way up to the crown of the head. Just at your own pace. You might feel the touch of the clothing against the body, the temperature of the air. And the only movement you might be aware of is the expanding and contracting of the body with the in and out breathing. And just giving your kind attention, your caring attention to each part of the body you go over. Just allowing any areas that feel tense to relax. And only when you feel ready, you can shift your awareness to the breath. Maybe at one spot, or the entire breath cycle. Or if you have an object of meditation that you've been regularly working with, you're welcome to stay with that object. And it's natural for the mind to bring up thoughts. And when that happens, just bring your full awareness to the fact that thoughts have arisen. Not feeding the thought, but just bringing awareness to it. And then very gently direct the awareness back to the object of of meditation. The body, the breath, some mental object you might be working with. So it's getting near time for the period to end. And it might be a good time to reflect on what was helpful, to stay with the object, to stay with the breath of the body. And remind yourself what's useful and what's not useful in the meditation. Even just to be aware, was I present for moments? And how was that? And as this period ends, please don't think it as the end of your time for awareness, for mindfulness. It's just a shift, shifting our attention slightly. Keeping the awareness with the body, aware of the mind. And aware of the intention to move and bringing your hands together in Anjali. Dukkha pata chani dukkha, baya pata chani baya, soka pata chani soka, hontu sabe pipani no. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear-struck be free from fear. May the sorrowful be free from sorrow. So too may all beings be free. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. So tonight is the last night, Tuesday night of our winter retreat. And we're happy, joyful to have Wat Bhutanaswaran, of people from Wat Bhutanaswaran, join us for this session. This is their regular time to join us at the first Tuesday of the month. And tomorrow will be our last Uposatha teaching by Ayya. So it's another opportunity to come together. So you're all welcomed for this too. I was reflecting a little bit, someone asked me, it was actually maybe a week ago, or several days ago, I don't know how many days ago it was, what was my topic, and what came to mind was how we're coming to a full circle at the end of towards the end, almost the end of the winter retreat, and how the mindfulness is a factor. We've been reflecting on the four foundations or establishments of mindfulness, and how that's it's never ending until we're till arhatship and parinibbana. It's not even ending in arhatship, but it can keep building and developing. I think it's perfected at arhatship, but we're continuously building. And there are many factors that are supportive for and prerequisites actually for doing the work of the Satipatthana. And it starts out with maybe some very, I want to say, just like the beginning, the seeds of these factors that are supporting the Satipatthana, which in turn supports the awakening factors, which in turn supports true knowledge and liberation. So what came to mind when I was reflecting on this is a particular sutta, which I'm going to pull some elements. Excuse me, to be mindful of my robe. It's one of the trainings as a monastic is to be mindful of our attire, because it isn't zipped on or tied on or belted on. Just we just have to fold it in a particular way. So there's a sutta in the numerical discourses, and it's called Ignorance, and it's in the tens, and it's number 60. Let me get it to the top. There's 61 and 62. It's in the pairs. The first sutta is Ignorance, and that's AN 1061, and AN 1062 is Craving, and they're parallel in that they're almost exactly alike, except that what's a supportive factor for ignorance is discussed in the first one, and ignorance is a supportive factor for craving. So they're almost identical, except for that detail. So the Lord Buddha probably was trying to emphasize one of those elements. And the reason why he talks about what is fueling or nourishing or a supportive factor for ignorance or craving is that we can bring our mindful attention to how we may be perpetuating ignorance or craving. We can see these elements in ourselves, and bringing our wise attention, Yonisa Manasikara, to the supporting factors denourishes them. It says that Yonisa Manasikara, or unwise attention, unskillful attention. There's a Yonisa Manasikara has quite a few different ways of translating it. One aspect of it is that Yoniso is going to the source. So that's actually appropriate. We're looking at what is the causal factor here. What's causing, what is this? We're going to the source. So I think we're using our wise attention to see how we create ignorance or suffering, or also the denourishment for the hindrances, which is the supporting factor for ignorance. If we bring our wise attention to the hindrances, that denourishes them. We see them for what they are. We see them as a hindrance. We see them as obstruction to wisdom. So then it kind of defuels. It's taking the fuel away. It's like, I see you, Mara. When you see an obstruction clearly, then it loses its power. Mara slinks away, or the hindrance starts to dissolve. If I have a anxiety and I'm aware of the tension in my body, and I'm aware, oh, this is anxiety, and I'm going in a negative feedback loop. Then this is the negative feedback loop that's perpetuating ignorance. It's obstruction to wisdom. This hindrance of anxiety. So I might have to watch it for a while. I might not catch it soon enough. And it's spinning around for a while, and the body's agitated, and it's just like, oh, I feel the agitation in my body. I see the agitation in my mind. But we can start implementing positive. The mindfulness, the sati and the Yonisa Manasikara. The sati is identifying it, seeing it, and then the Yonisa Manasikara is kind of investigating it more deeply. And so we start unraveling these hindrances, which is a supportive factor to ignorance. So there's a whole causal chain that supports ignorance. I've written down the Lord Buddha starts out talking about the harmful factors, the obstructive factors, ignorance or craving, in the sutta that I mentioned. And I'm going to not read the whole sutta. I'm just going to kind of pick out the highlights that explains the teaching, because there's a lot of repetition, and in an oral tradition, repetition helps with memory. But if you can find this teaching online, then you can see the factors for yourself. And I am a fan of low tech. So I have here, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but I have kind of a summary of the positive causal conditions to support awakening, to support true knowledge and liberation. So I'll go through those as well. But I made a little cheat sheet for myself on a piece of paper. I don't know if you'll be able to read it. Okay. Maybe if I had somebody some more highlight technology assisting me, we could put together something a little more readable. So the Lord Buddha says, I say that craving has for continued existence. This is vibhava. This is bhavatanha. It's bhavatanha. Bhavatanha. So bhavatanha, or craving for future existence, has a fuel. It has a nutriment. It has a supportive condition. So this is Bhante Sujato's translation, and he likes fuel for the word ahara, which is often translated as nutriment. But it also has that aspect as a fuel, like, well, food is fuel for us. Craving for continued existence has ignorance as a supporting condition, or its fuel. It's what fuels it. And what is the nutriment for ignorance? I was just talking about it. That's the 5 hindrances. So that's interesting. There, in the previous sutta, it says that it's, and in this sutra too, it says there's no there's no evident, there's no first point for craving, for continued existence that can be discerned. It can't be discerned. But and yet it is evident there is a specific condition for craving for continued existence. And that's the same with ignorance. There is no first point that can be discerned of ignorance, for ignorance, but there is a cause. There is a specific condition for it. And then it goes into this whole sequence of what's actually fueling craving for continued existence is ignorance. What's fueling ignorance is the 5 hindrances. And then the 3 kinds of misconduct are fueling the hindrances. And that's pretty interesting. Through body, speech, and mind, the unwholesome conduct. So if we're breaking precepts and we have unwholesome mental states, them hindrances in themselves are unwholesome. But if we have greed and hatred, and the basic 3 unwholesome roots will be feeding the hindrances. Let's see, just went up. So 3 kinds of misconduct. So that's through body, speech, and mind. And these are fueling the hindrances, and lack of sense restraint fuels the 3 kinds of misconduct. And lack of mindfulness and situational awareness. This is asati sampajanya. So Bhante Sujato translates sati sampajanyo as situational awareness. So this is lacking situational awareness. Mindfulness and clear comprehension is another translation, is maybe a more well-known one, the older translation. And I think that's how Bhante Bodhi has translated it. And the fuel for the lack of mindfulness and situational awareness is improper attention. So here we have the Yonisa Manasikara that I was mentioning earlier. So he says improper attention, sometimes it's translated as wise attention or careful attention is what it's translated in the Bhante Bodhi translates it as careful attention, which is interesting. But as I was saying, the yoni is the womb, or it's going to the source. So this is a kind of also I saw Bhante Sujato said, I think it's an investigative awareness, or let's see if I wrote it down someplace. He had if I have it right here, investigating inside oneself. When in one of the suttas, I was looking up Yonisa Manasikara, and this is how he translated it in that particular sutta. The way it was being used was investigating inside oneself. So that's another translation for Yoniso Manasikara. So careful attention, wise attention, proper attention, but the lack of that is fueling the lack of mindfulness and situational awareness. So here I want to say these two are probably mutually supportive. I start directing my mind in a particular way to see what's going on. Why am I not attending to things in the situation? What is going on? So this helps me have situational awareness. But if I'm not paying attention to what's distracting me, what's going on, then I don't have the situational awareness. But if I start having situational awareness, then I'm starting to be aware of my mind as well as my activity, because that's part of the situation. I hear a sound, and then my mind goes to that sound. And so that's part of the situation I'm in, but I'm bringing my awareness back to my activity because I'm aware, oh, my mind went off. So this is why the lack of Yonisa Manasikara would be feeding the lack of the situational awareness. So what is the fuel for improper attention? And then this is kind of interesting too, why this is mentioned like this. It's the lack of faith, the lack of saddha. Trust, confidence, conviction, I guess, is another translation. Some people don't like the word faith. It's not based on kind of excitement and charisma. I don't like the word. I'm trying to figure out another. I don't like the word blind faith because blind people can be very wise, but I think it's not really. It's not based on understanding. So maybe it's foolish faith. Maybe it's a foolish kind of faith. So lack of faith. So lack of faith fuels the improper attention. So that's very interesting. And what is fueling lack of faith? It's listening to untrue teaching. So we're kind of being misguided. So the saddha does not arise. So we don't have the confidence in the Buddha's teaching, which leads us to the other supportive factors to overcome ignorance and to have true knowledge and liberation. And then associating with bad people is what supports not hearing the true Dhamma. So not having wise companions, hanging out with people that are, I don't know, that are not interested in, at least they're not interested in the Buddhist teaching, but could even get to the point where bad associations can get us into a lot of trouble. Who we hang out with really influences us, especially the younger we are. But even as adults, everybody else is cheating on their taxes that I know, so why not me? Something like that. I'm not advocating that, of course, but I'm just some example, I know everybody else is getting away with X, Y, and Z, so why shouldn't I do that? This is the people I'm hanging out with are drinking beers and whatever. So so that's going from a result at the end of this chain, the ignorance and the craving. And these are things that we want to unravel. So when we start looking at the causal factors, we say, oh, maybe we should put the positive factors in place instead. So Now I have my little cheat sheet card here. Is it visible at all? Maybe not. Is that readable? So I've gone backwards, and this is also in the teaching. And if you it may not be so readable, but somebody there, kind of, sort of. So in the sutta, actually, he does talk about, I'm going to jump. So he repeats himself about how as each of these factors, he does the reverse, starting with associating with bad people and not hearing the proper Dhamma, and lack of faith and lack of proper attention, and on up. That way, each reinforce the other, fill up. Well, it's just like heavy rain. It's like when it rains heavily on a mountaintop, and the water flows downhill to fill the hollows, crevices, and creeks, they become full, and they fill up the pools, and the pools fill up the lakes, and the lakes fill up the streams, and the streams fill up the rivers, and the rivers become full, and they fill up the ocean. So this is how each of these factors reinforce the other. But we want to go to the positive feedback loop instead of the negative. And I thought of it when I was at the Hermitage. I was at a Hermitage on the Sonoma coast, and we were getting a lot of rain. And the path to my kuti, to my hut, there was lots of streams going just straight down, and then there was some points where they had made kind of like a mound across the road to try to divert the water. But where I was walking, it was all just kind of going mostly downhill. So I was noticing that there were some places where there were little streams going off of the path. So the ground was really soft. And I'm not supposed to dig as a monastic, but I can move soft earth. So I started moving the earth a little bit. And then if there was a loose rock, I would remove the rock and then start moving directing the stream. I was channeling the stream. So because if the trail is very wet and slick and muddy, I'm more likely to slip. So here's a metaphor for you. So I was diverting the stream away from where I was wanting to walk. So maybe that's diverting the unwholesome aspects away, right? Another thing I noticed, though, is that the water starts to, you loosen the dirt a little bit and direct it that way. But as the water has more area to move, it starts moving more of the earth away, so that it's digging out the stream bed. The water itself is making a stream bed. And then I'd come back later and I'd look and I'd see some of the places where I moved the dirt, it was working really well, and others it wasn't. So I focused a little bit more about removing rocks from the area where it was actually working well to divert the water. So I was getting positive reinforcement for what I was doing. Oh, this is actually working. No, this one isn't working so well. So that kind of awareness of what's helpful and what's harmful. This is some of what we're doing with the mindfulness and the Yonisa Manasikara. These things, how we place our attention, where we're placing our attention, this is what's supportive. So the simile of things filling up. So not only that it's gaining force, and that as the other factors are developing, so this can happen with ignorance. We can just continue to associate with the wrong people and get hear wrong stories, and then get attending improperly and so on, and not having faith in the Buddhist teaching because we think, well, yeah, that's not what most people think. Anyway, so we want to support the positive factors. So I want to jump down to them. This is what we want to create, these channels in our minds. So we're developing, like the stream is developing, it's digging in deeper, it's making a deeper pathway, and it's actually the force of the water is getting stronger. Okay, you keep developing the supportive factors, and then they in turn actually they're supported by the factors further on as well. So let's get to that. I'm just going down. So this is interesting. So the Buddha says that I say that knowledge and freedom are fueled by something. They're not unfueled. So they're supportive factors for knowledge and freedom. And the supportive factor for knowledge and freedom, or factors, are the 7 factors for awakening. And the 7 factors of awakening are supported by the 4 kinds of mindfulness. So this is Chatura Sati Sampajanya. No, Satipatthana, excuse me. This is Satipatthana. So Bhante Sujato says the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, but it can be also establishments of mindfulness or foundations of mindfulness. It's other ways of translating it. So we're establishing ourselves on these foundations, or there's a lot of ways of considering it. So the 3 kinds, okay. And what is the fuel for the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation? The 3 kinds of good conduct. So this is kind of interesting that the lack of the hindrances are not mentioned here. But the hindrances and the 7 awakening factors are considered kind of like opposed to one another. So the hindrances block the awakening factors, and the awakening factors destroy the hindrances. So but the 3 kinds of unwholesome conduct support the hindrances. So the 3 kinds of good conduct support the 4 establishments of mindfulness. So if we do want to practice the Satipatthana, we have to have our sila in good shape, and we have to have the mental factors in good shape, and that would be including abandoning the hindrances. So if we have wholesome conduct through body, speech, and mind, the mind would be free from hindrances. Our sila would be pure, and that sila would be both speech and through the body and the speech. So sense restraint is the fuel or supporting factor for the three kinds of good conduct. I like the translation. This is a Indriya Samvara, and it can be understood as guarding or protecting the mind. So at the sense gates, we have all this contact, and if we're not protecting the mind from aversion or from craving at the response to contact, then we are likely to. If we just don't have concerned, also, we may break some of the ethical conduct that we cherish, because we've overcome. If we're not guarding our sense gates, we may be overcome by aversion or overcome by craving. So this is how sense restraint is protecting our sila, our ethical conduct. And mindfulness and situational awareness is the fuel for sense restraint. So that we are aware of what's arising, not only in our activity, we're aware of what we're doing, but also what's arising in our minds. And then also, if I am sweeping, say, and I'm putting my full awareness in sweeping, and an odor like some fragrance of some food cooking, I have contact at the nose door, I don't get overwhelmed by that and go drop my broom and go off and get something to eat. This would be lack of sense restraint. That's kind of an innocent example of that. But so we keep with our object of attention of what we've set out to do, what is our activity that we're engaging in, and we don't get distracted and pulled one way or another by the senses. And then here we have the Yonisa Manasikara supporting the mindfulness and situational awareness. So I'll use it. There's so many different translations of these words, but so our mindfulness and clear awareness is supported by careful attention. That's the way that Bhante Bodhi would be translating it. So these all are proper attention. It's almost all, there's like these discrete activities of the mind. There's a awareness and attention. And I think the Yoniso Manasikara is bringing in, supporting the Sampajanya, which is the wisdom aspect that's associated with the sati, which is aware of what's going on and is it appropriate or is it not appropriate? What is the purpose of what I'm doing? This kind of thing is in the sati sampajanya. Am I staying with my object of meditation, which is sweeping or chopping vegetables or whatever it is that I've set myself to doing for a wholesome purpose? So these two, Yoniso Manasikara and Sati Sampajanya, can be See, working together. So this is kind of the feedback, the positive feedback loop that's happening, where as your mind becomes more aware of what you're doing, you're aware of the movement of your body and aware of what's going on in your mind. And the Yonisa Manasikara is saying, okay, a little bit, that's not quite right. Oh, I see what's going on. I see how the mind went this way because of that. So your fuel, this fuel is it's like creating or nourishing positive aspects. So the fuel for proper attention, this is quite interesting, is sada, or faith. So I think this is also a feedback loop too, because as I see my mind is becoming freer from the hindrances, and I'm able to pay more closely attention to what I'm actually doing in the present moment, and I have the wisdom to see what's bringing my mind to go away and what's actually helping me stay in the present moment through this kind of investigation, then the sada will also be increasing. But the sada is bringing us to engage in the practice in the first place. Someone has said, well, why don't you try this? And we go, oh, maybe it'll work for me, and I'll try it. So then the fuel for faith is listening to the true teaching. So we're so blessed to have so many sources, either in print or online or in person, teachings of the Lord Buddha. And then we associate with good people in order to hear that. But they are also a good influence us. If we're with people that are keeping their sila well and interested in the teachings, and it's just, or we really respect them as knowledgeable. That's the ultimate good, the Kalyana Mitta. But this is Sapurisa. That's the superior person. So somebody who's really well-versed in the teaching and who's keeping their conduct well, and someone who's inspiring to us. This will be fuel for us to listen to them. And this will bring up our faith, and listening to this will help us we'll attend properly to what they're saying, but also to develop these qualities such as Yonisa Manasikara and Sati Sampajanya, and up the line. And another thing that's interesting is the Sati Sampajanya is included in the foundations of mindfulness, or in the Satipatthana of the body. So I've been speaking for quite some time, and I should allow a little bit of time for people to ask a question or make a comment. And we could go maybe just a little bit later if there's and people who don't need to stay could leave. If we get engaged in some good conversation, we don't want to leave. But does anyone in the room have a question or comment? I could start with that. And if you have a question or comment, you can put up a little virtual hand, or I don't see everyone on the screen. So you put up a hand, and Anjali. Oh, okay. Richard has a little virtual hand up. Maybe I should put it
yes,
into. gallery view or something. Okay. Yes, Richard, please.
It's interesting that these two suttas deal with two of the taints, becoming and ignorance, but they don't mention sensual desire directly. But if you think about the descriptions, you know, it talks about due to the nutriment of ignorance, right? You have becoming, and that causes you, once you become, then because you're now separate in objective reality and Dharma, that separateness is going to cause an interaction with your contact with the senses, and you know, and that's going to result in eventually you like this, you don't like that, or you find this more or less neutral, it doesn't bother you so much. So in terms of this description here, it's not necessary to separate sensual desire by itself, because it's kind of a result of the process, the ongoing process that's going on here. Anyways, that's just, you know, an insight I got while I was looking at these sutras while you were speaking.
That's a good point.
That's all.
Yeah, that's a good point, Richard. It's kind of like, also, it's a negative feedback loop, because the desire for continued existence, why are we desiring that? Is because we're craving at this for sensual pleasure. That's the only reason why we would want to continue to existing. So yeah, so that would be the negative feedback that would perpetuate that. So seeing how the suffering that's involved is one of that kind of Yonisa Manasikara, where you're investigating and seeing, oh, where is my suffering coming from? That's because of craving. This is like the ultimate, you know, like with the Four Noble Truths, if we really penetrate that deeply, then that'll help us with letting go of our desire for continued existence. So thank you for bringing that up, Richard. Yes, somebody at the Wat Bhutanasaur? You unmute yourself, please.
Yes, Ayya. This is Carl, and Carl have a question. Go ahead, Carl.
Hi, Ayya. So wanting continual existence, seeking out the pleasure out of the sensual desire, that's a form of ignorance. So how do you change that so you could free that up so that if insight and reality hits you and like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I mean, what's the best way to let it go?
Well, this is where we brought in the all those positive feedback loops, and it does take time. It's not like so developing these factors over time. But I think a lot of it is the awareness, bringing awareness to the craving, being awareness to, okay, so I had some momentary satisfaction and now I want more, and seeing how there is suffering in that. And, or yeah, something that we really enjoyed, it ends, breaks, people die, we're looking at impermanence. So any of looking at examining any of the three characteristics helps us. This is bringing wisdom to understand the three characteristics deeply. But as that sutta was saying, starting out with associating with good friends, hearing the Dhamma, and then the sada, that, oh yes, these teachings are really worthwhile for me to put my mind to. And so I pay really close attention to them. And that's not quite the meaning of Yonisa Manasikara, but I do start investigating them. And like I was saying, Yonisa Manasikara is going to the source. What is the source of my suffering? Oh, craving for sensual pleasures. What is blocking me from getting deeper into wisdom? I'm being distracted because I'm not using sense restraint. I'm, so just again and again, hearing the teachings, associating with wise people, developing the faith, doing your own investigation, and you're raising your hand because.
So, where does Mara play a role in any of this? Mara?
Oh, yes, of course. So just recognizing, you could say Mara, some people think Mara is internal, and some people believe there is actually a deity that's trying to keep us in this perpetual, this round and round of samsara. So if you see a negative tendency or distraction or something like that, you might say, oh, am I seeing Mara? Is this Mara? I'm being really pulled to do something that's unwholesome. I see I'm enthralled with the beauty or something at the sense gates. I'm enthralled, and I see myself really being pulled in that direction. And you might say to yourself, I see you, Mara. I see you trying to pull me in a direction of an unwholesome activity, or I see you're distracting me from my meditation because I'm, I have this very strong desire because of a memory or some impact at one of the sense gates. And it's really, if you can trace back, this is the Yonisa Manasikara. I hear a sound or I smell something that reminds me of something in the past, and that was really pleasurable. And then I start fantasizing about it, and then I start wanting to renew that experience. and this is what perpetuates us in samsara, because we start glamorizing that contact at the sense gates, and we think this is what's going to bring us true happiness. But if we start really investigating it, it's just it's not going to last very long, and we're going to suffer because of the craving. And then understanding aversion is also a kind of craving, because we want things other than they actually are. So I hope that's helpful. And it takes time, but I see you're at the Watts, so you're associating with good people, and you're listening to Dhamma, and so you're on the start of the path there. You've probably been doing this for quite some time, though. But anyway, I see another hand. It's Ruwanti has her hand up. And then
I appreciate the teachings tonight very much. The sutta is beautiful because it explains all the things that we need to add and things we need to remove. So the sequence is really beautiful, and it contains a lot of things that is helpful. My comment is related to Richard's question, actually. What came to my mind is this Sunday we learned seeing the gratification, danger, and abandonment as asada, adinava, nissarana, I think. So seeing that would help us to get away from the perpetuating of samsara.
Mhm.
That's just wanted to bring that up. That just came to my mind during Richard's question. So
So you're talking about asada, adinawa, and nisarana, where the it's translated often as the gratification, the danger, and the escape.
escape. Yeah,
Yeah. So
right.
just really seeing that there is gratification in the senses. This is why we're enamored by them. This is where the Buddha says that if there wasn't gratification, we wouldn't be enamored by it. But since there is gratification in the senses, we are enamored by it, or we can be enamored by it. And seeing the danger in it, we may become it's nibbida, it's repulsed by it or disenchanted by it. So yeah, so really seeing it clearly, this is the seeing Mara, seeing how Mara is trying to draw us in and keep us in samsara by the gratification. And then, but if we don't see the danger, we're never gonna, we might be aware of the danger, but we're not looking at it properly. This is where the Yonisa Manasikara is the proper attention to it. Instead of, oh no, how can I avoid the danger of it? How can I keep this going forever? We think, oh yeah, things are impermanent. This grasping is causing me a lot of suffering. So, and so what is the escape? It's the abandoning of that very craving. This is what, or a release. Release is another, somebody has translated the nisarana as release, which I don't, I mean, it's maybe somewhere, I did not in the dictionaries translations I have, but yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. That is one way of examining things, the gratification, the danger, and the escape, and that actually is one approach to the Four Noble Truths, because you're looking at the cause. We're looking carefully at the cause, and then if we look carefully enough, then we can abandon it, which would be the cessation. So I think Richard has had his hand up again, so I'll go on. Thank you for the question.
Yes, one thing I thought was important about the sutra is keeps discussing nutriment. And in, I think it's Majjhima Nikaya number 9, right view, there are 16 ways of approaching right view. And the first one Sariputta gives is about nutriment, right? About nutrition, right? And it's interesting because if someone becomes a monastic, they adopt what Buddha calls the best type of right livelihood, which is to live by begging, a person of few wants. And actually the term bhikkhu means beggar. In the ancient world, people were known by their occupation. So when you leave home and become a bhikkhu, you're taking up the occupation of begging. And because begging only takes maybe a short amount of time compared to going out and working a farm and everything you have to do to keep maintaining your body and your family's bodies and everything, right? All the nutriment you have to develop. It leaves you a lot of free time. And that free time allows you to eventually develop going into the jhanas. And Buddha says when you enter into the jhana, Mara becomes blinded because you're going from the physical sensual realm to a more refined mental pleasure. So you're not thinking about the senses anymore. So Mara, because your objective eventually is to reach the deathless. And the name Mara really means death, So you're getting beyond Mara's realm. You're leaving Mara's realm behind by moving forward in the jhanas, not getting attached to any particular jhana, but by moving forward, till eventually you get to Chaitya Vimukti, liberation of mind. And then if you can just go slightly beyond that and attain liberation by wisdom, then you attain full arahatship and you attain the deathless. So anyways, I just thought I'd bring that up because the gentleman's question was about, he mentioned Mara. Well, what does Mara have to do with it? And that's the whole point, trying to get beyond sensual desire, because by having sensual desire, you have to keep going through birth and death, birth and death, birth and death, and all the suffering and difficulty and everything in between. So you want to use Buddha's clear description of the Eightfold Path. How to accomplish that is eventually to get to the eighth step of being able to enter into samadhi, into the jhanas, and then go beyond that into the formless experiences as well.
Well, thank you.
Anyways, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that is right view, is understanding nutriment. And one aspect is the physical food, and then there's contact and volition, and then the consciousness at the six sense gates. But what we're craving is that contact and the gratification at the six sense gates. And that food is just one aspect of it. All the sense pleasures, you got to be aware. So one part of being an alms mendicant is that actually we don't beg, and that we're asking people that we're traditionally we would just walk with our bowls and people would know what we were doing, or they might ask us. In the United States, they say, "Oh, what are you doing?" Or they try to put money in our bowls. And we say, "Oh, we're not looking for money." "What are you doing?" "Oh, we're looking for the day's meal." So we have to take whatever, instead of saying, "Oh, I don't want to mention some kind of food because I've done that before," and then people bring it. So I've mentioned some sumptuous kind of food that I want. I can't just go to a restaurant unless somebody's invited me, but I can't just say, go to the grocery store and say, "Oh, that looks good. I want this, I want this, I want that." So this is looking at the mind, and then I may want this, I may want that, and then I can't just go and grab it. So this is a kind of a training, and some places maybe there are some things like the allowables cupboard, and I could go grab it, a piece of chocolate, and then I have to watch my mind. Oh, is this just craving, or do I really need nutriment to support my mind for the evening's abiding? So this is the investigation that goes on. But the nourishment in this particular sutta is denourishing the unwholesome by our attention to it. The Yonisa Manasikara is really key, is being aware of what's causing the trouble for ourselves and nourishing what's supportive. And the whole chain of events, starting out with the friends on the path, admirable friends, superior people, Kalyana Mitas. This is really important. I mean, because people go, if they're not ready for seclusion and they think they can do it on their own, they might be gravely disappointed. So we really need that continued support and continued attention to the true teachings, and just continue to develop the sada, continue to have that Yonisa Manasikara, and really wisely attending to things. I mean, then up the line to the Sati Sampajanya, and then after that, it's the conduct, the three kinds. If we don't keep our sila well, it all works together. It's this package, we have to, and it might seem complicated, but if we take it, one moment at a time, just taking it one moment at a time, we can do it. So keeping our sila supports that point we get into the really liberating factors of the satipatthana, to be really, we're ready for the satipatthana until we've really worked at understanding the teaching to a certain level, keeping our sila pure, and working with the being aware in every moment as much as we can, and abandoning the hindrances. Then we're ready for the more deeper practices. And then, yes, the jhanas will come. We don't have to worry about the jhanas until the jhanas are ready for us. Or I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but we're creating the conditions for the awakening factors, and the samma samadhi is there. It's in the awakening factors. So I don't know the gentleman's name at Wat Busanasaran. What is your name?
My name's Carl.
Carl. Okay, Carl. I forgot.
Hi.
Carl has
Okay.
been putting his hand up for a while. Yes.
So Longpo told me to study dependent origination, and I've been listening to stuff and reading about it. So the last birth, if you're to have the last birth, technically, would it be the case that you're able to break all 8 chains of dependent origination? And what we were discussing previously, how would that relate to dependent origination? We have a bit less less time in the world between each birth or whatever.
So our developing wisdom, we're looking at causal factors. And so we're developing wisdom to see in the present moment what's causing our suffering and what's blocking our wisdom. So ignorance is the beginning, is the very beginning of dependent origination of Vijja. So what is blocking the wisdom that is going to, what is it that's going to penetrate and destroy the ignorance? So it's all, if you're working with the awakening factors, you're going to be an investigating of the Dhamma Vicharya, or investigating the Dhammas. You're going to really start working with dependent origination at some point. It's going to be, things will start unfolding. So, and yeah, the direction you go to with your, just being aware of that other the causal chain of dependent origination, and seeing, this is another aspect of Yonisa Manasikara. You might see what you can observe in this lifetime is that sense contact, the feeling or vedana arises, and then the craving, and then the bhava is harder to really, which brings you to rebirth. But there's like sections in there that you can pay attention to, you can experience in this life. So this is that Yonisa Manasikara, which is going to the source. So the teaching all is kind of like this big overarching and interwoven teaching. So you can pick up one aspect and it'll lead you to another aspect. But don't get overwhelmed, because you don't have to think about it all at once. Like I was saying, you just pay attention to this moment, what's arising. And just studying the teaching, then that things will start becoming natural for you, and giving yourself time for silent meditation will help you with observing the mind and seeing how we're causing our own suffering. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh, David, you have a question? And Ayya, we have David here that have a question for you.
Okay, so let's have this as the last question because we're going a little overtime and anyone's been welcome to leave if they needed to. But yes, go ahead, David.
Thank you, Ayya. It's wonderful. I have a question about what you were talking about. So this process where we get into, let's say like a habit or something of like getting involved with something where we know it's not as wholesome as it should be, but it's sort of become maybe a habit or something. Where do you cut that off, like nip it in the bud in the sequence of this process? And could you talk a little bit about some techniques and skills to use mindfulness to be able to not let that get so far, so you get it in the beginning before it even goes all the way to some kind of activity which may not be as wholesome as we would like, or might be engaging in sensual pleasure or something, rather than just being still?
That's a good question. So our awareness develops over time, and sometimes we do have to backtrack. Like, oh, I'm noticing I'm eating, I'm overeating, say. And then I might be able to just like put down whatever I'm eating. I say, okay, this isn't good. I'm just indulging in sensual pleasure. But then, like I was saying, you trace back, okay, the thought of, oh, I was feeling upset and angry. And then I rushed to the refrigerator and I grabbed some food. And then you might say, oh, I got upset and angry because I had this memory of something that someone said 5 years ago, or yesterday, or 2 hours ago, whatever it was. Something in the past happened, the memory comes up, I get upset and angry, and I rush to the refrigerator. Or a beer, or something like that. So we look at or just the desire comes up. Like I was saying, this fragrance. I was in my kuti away from everything. It was very strange. And I was smelling food cooking. I don't know how I possibly could, but somehow the memory of food was coming up in the afternoon. It was just so weird. And so I was far away from, and it was against my precept to eat in the afternoon. But even something like that could happen. We're not even aware of it. This is the beauty of really examining the mind and becoming more and more and more aware. So I can trace back and I can see, okay, I have this habit when I'm feeling upset or angry or anxious or something to eat or whatever, drink beer or whatever. So we just kind of like say to ourselves, I'm going to really be aware and try to stop it at that point. Because a lot of times it's hard for to stop the mental formations from coming up. You have to keep track, going back and back and back. But you see the pattern. You see the craving arising just out of boredom, or you see the craving arising. There's some reason there's a craving. I mean, we need to eat, and I used to work in an alcohol and drug treatment program that also had an eating disorder program, and the most difficult one to work with was the eating disorder, because you can abstain from drugs and alcohol. You can just say, that's it, I'm not doing it. So moderation is really a difficult discipline. So you can set a discipline for yourself and say, like, if it is food, I don't know what it is for you. I'm going to really manage this somehow. I am just going to have one serving. And then there's a reflection for the requisites. There's lots of ways to abandon unwholesome behavior. And one of that is through using it appropriately. So the wisely reflecting, I use alms food, not for fun, not for pleasure, not for fattening, not for beautification, only for the maintenance and nourishment of this body, for keeping it healthy, for helping with the holy life. I'm just using that one. And there's medicine, the lodging, or clothing, not, so some people overspend. They spend a lot of money on beautification with clothing. So we say to ourselves, I'm wearing these clothes just to protect the body, to keep protect it from the elements, to be modest. This is another thing. So there's various things in the Buddha's teaching that can help us. So moderation is a very important discipline. But bringing awareness to what's driving us to make us act in these unwholesome ways. If it's a physical activity, if it's a mental activity, you go from the physical activity and then you start examining the mental activity. Oh, I notice I get angry a lot. I notice I get anxious a lot. Whatever it is, I get distracted a lot. So then bringing awareness to that's arising frequently, and then you keep tracing back. How do I stay with my object of meditation, or how do I stay with the activity that I'm engaging with? So you start looking at what's supportive of that. Like if I feel the broom in my hand, I just really feel the contact, and I hear the sound of the broom against the floor. And this is keeping me with that object of meditation. What is keeping me with the breath? Maybe I need something in addition to just the sense of the breath. Maybe I need a different object of meditation. So in the Buddhist teaching, there's a lot that can help us with those mental factors, but it's continuously tracing back. Where did this unwholesome activity come from? And then also making a commitment to ourselves that I want to abandon this unwholesome behavior. This is important. And then when we see that we are bringing more mindfulness and awareness to, and catching it sooner, then we can, it's okay to rejoice in those kind of things. Give ourselves a little bit of positive reinforcement.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Yeah, it's like a lot of times like trying to keep 8 precepts and then maybe not, right? That's more of the context of it. So it's like, yeah, it's helpful. I feel like it's like when you trace it back and you see, okay, here's what actually caused that. Maybe it was something that happened like weeks ago or something, right? Is there something you do with that knowledge once you see where it comes in? At that point, like some skill you can use to say, okay, I know this was what triggered to want to do whatever, like whatever it is, but then you go back, like, I don't know, like an example would be like a memory of a song and then you want to go listen to music or something. If you're trying not to do that, if you have that memory, you have knowledge of like the memory of it or something, like once you know, like, or you saw a person that reminded you of something, so you go do something else, like something like that, right? Like at that point where you have the memory of seeing that person, having the memory, like, do you do anything with that? Or do you just having the mindfulness of, oh, this is what it was, and that cuts it off? Or is there some technique once you know what it triggered that?
Yeah, something like music and seeing, I have this desire, strong desire to go and listen to the song. And seeing and feeling what it feels like to have that craving. And it's in itself is suffering, it's dukkha. that craving in itself is dukkha. And it's not an unwholesome thing, but when I was at the Hermitage, I would get a flask of hot water in the early afternoon, and then I would want to make tea in the early morning. And by the time I was making my tea, it wasn't the right temperature. And there's so much dukkha over wanting to have my tea hot. And I could make tea, but it was just kind of, And so there's this dukkha, if I was breaking a precept, the precept should really be protecting me. I should really if I'm breaking a precept because of craving, then you have kalyana mittas that you confess to and say, oh, and that helps you keep the precept, because it's kind of embarrassing to say, oh, I snuck off and I listened to this song or listen to the radio or something. And then it's just the feeling of like being sneaky and how that feels. But but if you catch yourself before you go and, listen to music or something like that, then just be aware of that craving. And sometimes that's just, I don't need to do this. This isn't really going to, having the water at the right temperature or hearing that song isn't going to alleviate my suffering in the world. It's not lasting happiness. So it's 9:00. We've got a half hour over, but so we should stop. But I appreciate all your kind attention and wish you all well on the path. And we can end with paying respects to the then just to remind everybody, tomorrow, same time, same station. I think there may be a special link for the Uposita. Is there a special Uposita link? So you can register on Dhammadharini for the Uposita special end of winter retreat. End of winter retreat. Uposita program led by Ayya Tataloka.
Thank you, Ayya.
So we will end with paying homage to the triple gem. Without falling off. Araham Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivati Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasa Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sangham Dhamma. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ayya, for the teaching. We bow to the teacher.
Arhantana Chitejena Rakambanda Misabaso.
Thank you, Ayya. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Ayya. Take care.
You're welcome. Thank you all for participating. Good to see you.
So much.
Good to see Fatipada.